Step to the right.
Hey, comment, sir. Vindicated? You're looking forward to being vindicated?
Yes, I am.
And how many? Captain.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is a continuation of the single greatest witch hunt of all time. We have a rogue judge who rules that properties are worth a tiny fraction, 1/100th, a tiny fraction of what they actually are. We have a racist attorney general who's a horror show, who ran on the basis that she was going to get Trump before she even knew anything about me. She used this to run for governor. She failed in her attempt to run for governor. She had virtually no polling. She came back and she said, well, now I'll go back to get Trump again. And this is what we have. It's a scam. It's a sham. Just so you know, my financial statements are phenomenal. They are actually less in terms of the numbers used than the actual net worth. The actual net worth is substantially more. No bank was affected. No bank was hurt. They don't even know why they have to be involved. And they've so testified. They can't believe that they're involved because they were paid back on time. There were no defaults. There were no problems. And it was like a perfect client. In the meantime, people are being murdered all over the sidewalks of New York. There was no victim here. The banks were represented by the best, biggest, most prestigious law firms in the state of New York, actually in the country. Some of the biggest and best law firms. In all cases, the biggest and best law firms. That's who represented them. The banks got back their money. Again, there was never a default. There was never a problem. Everything was perfect. There was no crime. The crime is against me because we have a corrupt district attorney, but we have a corrupt attorney general, and it all comes down from the DOJ. They're totally coordinated this in Washington because I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by 10 points, and I'm leading the Republicans by 50 and 60 points. That's pretty much, they say, over. I never accept that, but they say it's over. This has to do with election interference, plain and simple. They're trying to damage me so that I don't do as well as I'm doing in the election. Our country's gone to hell. A country that's in decline, serious decline. We have a man running our country who has no clue, doesn't know what he's doing, and you know it better than anybody because you have to cover him. What they've done with open borders, what they've done with interest rates and taxes, it's a disgrace. So what we have here is an attempt to hurt me in an election. It's an attempt to hurt me in an election. This never happened before, where President of the United States leaves office and gets indicted. And the reason I got indicted was that I ran. If I didn't run, I'd be sitting right now at a beach like Biden does every time, even though he's supposed to be working. So very simply put, it's a witch hunt. It's a disgrace. We have a corrupt attorney general in this state. You see how she does? This trial was railroaded and fast-tracked. This trial could have been brought years ago, but they waited till I was right in the middle of my campaign. The same with other trials and indictments. It's all run by DOJ, which is corrupt in Washington. Everything goes through them. They're all corrupt people. Frankly, our country is corrupt. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. We're going to straighten it out. They have one property that's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times what this judge put down as a value. Put down a value $18 million, and the property's probably worth, could be anywhere from 50 to 100 times more than that. And a lot of those numbers could even be low. We have other properties, the same thing, so he devalued everything. I didn't even put in my best asset, which is the brand in terms of value. Coca-Cola, take a look at their value. They have a value. The value of their brand is more than everything else put together. My brand is extremely valuable. I didn't even use it in my financials. If I wanted to build up a financial statement, I would have built it up by using brand in addition to everything else. We have the greatest properties We have among the greatest properties in the world, and I have to go through this for political reasons. This judge is a politician. He comes out of the clubs. He's running unopposed. The reason he's unopposed is because he's getting Trump. They always run opposed. He's getting Trump. The bosses say, don't run against this guy. He's doing great. He's getting Trump. But he overplayed his hand, and he should be investigated for what he's done. What he did in undervaluing these properties is a disgrace to our nation. This shouldn't be a case. One other thing. We have a clause in the contract which tells, essentially, buyer beware. The contract is very, very, if you take a look and you speak to the banks, and you will, I hope you speak to the banks, because the banks got paid in full. I hope you speak to the banks. But we have a clause in the contract. It's like a buyer beware clause. It says when you take a look at the financial statement, don't believe anything you read. This is up front. Don't believe anything you read. Some people call it a worthless clause because it makes the statement and anything you read in the statement worthless. It says go out and do your own research. Go out and do your own due diligence. You have to study the statement carefully. Do not believe anything. In fact, it's so strong that people read it and they don't even accept it. They don't even want it. They don't even use it. It's called a disclaimer clause. It's very common. If you put it in, if you don't have time to do statements, or even if you do have time, people like to have it. This is what's called a full disclaimer. We disclaim the financial statements. But even with a full disclaimer, which immediately takes you out of any fraud situation and any litigation. And by the way, when the Attorney General found out about the disclaimer clause, he said, that's okay, let's go forward anyway. It's good publicity. These are corrupt people we're dealing with, the most corrupt people. We have a great company. I built a great company. It's got tremendous value. It's got some of the greatest real estate assets in the world. And now I have to go before a rogue judge as a continuation of Russia, 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 as a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. And I don't think the people of this country are going to stand for it. If I weren't leading in all the polls, or if I weren't running, I wouldn't have any of these cases. I wouldn't be seeing you this morning. But I'll be seeing a lot of you, because this is a horrible thing that's happening to our country, and we've got to get it straightened away. So we'll go in and see our rogue judge, and we'll listen to this man. And I think most people get it. People are getting it. I can tell you the voters getting it, because every time they give me a fake indictment, I go up in the polls, and that's never happened before. But this is a disgrace, and you ought to go after this Attorney General, because she's turning off everybody from coming in. You know, I don't know if you take a look at the outflow of business. Businesses are fleeing New York because of horrible, horrible attorney generals and judges like we have. They go to other places where they can be treated fairly and with respect. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody back up.
thank everybody. This is a disgraceful situation. As I say, murders are going on as you stand here, and they're wasting everybody's time for many months on this case where banks got paid a fortune, loan money got paid money back, didn't even need their money. They built a great company, and we have to go through this. So this just broke, but before I discuss that, why are we trying a case that the Appellate Division of New York State has just ruled recently that we won 80% of our case. And this judge refuses to acknowledge the ruling, which is very plain for all to see. We won, as you know, it had to do with Ivanka, and it had to do with other things. It had to do with the statute of limitations, where they wanted to go back to 200 years ago, 500 years ago. It was limited, very much limited, and it amounted to about 80% of the case was won by us in the Appellate Division. And this rogue judge, a Trump hater, the only one that hates Trump more is his associate up there, his person that works with him. She's screaming into his ear on almost every time we ask a question. A disgrace. You want to know the truth? It's a disgrace. So this rogue judge refuses to acknowledge the fact that we won 80% of this case in the Appellate Division, including statute of limitations. You know, in the statute of limitations, you have a period of time. He wants to go back so far that nobody's ever even heard of such a ridiculous thing. So we won the case in the Appellate Division, and this judge refuses to acknowledge the Appellate Division, meaning he's got contempt for his own court system. Nobody's ever seen that before, where he refuses to even talk about it or acknowledge it. And the Attorney General is she's a corrupt person, a terrible person, driving people out of New York, number one. That's number one. Number two, it just came out a few minutes ago where Palm Beach County, the people that do this, agree with us 100%, and they say the judge is wrong. The judge is wrong in his ruling. He valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million, and it's worth $1 billion, maybe $1.5 billion. And you saw where various properties that we have that are valued in the financial statements, which is totally subject to the clause that you've all been hearing about doing buyer beware, as they call it. But this just came out. Error in New York civil fraud case against Trump is flagged by industry insiders who say valuation of Mar-a-Lago cited by judge is based on a misunderstanding of basic real estate practice. So they're saying the judge has misunderstood basic real estate practice. I say they're wrong about that. He didn't misunderstand it. This is a rigged court. He's put there to do a job on Trump. Now, this comes from highly respected officials in Palm Beach County. Also, apparent mistake by Judge Engoron surfaces in the use of a Palm Beach County appraisal of Mar-a-Lago that, an expert says, is detached from the true value of the property. Now, I don't know the people that we're talking about in Palm Beach County, but they saw this egregious trial, this horrible, horrible trial going on, while at the same time people are being murdered right outside of the streets, and nothing happens to those people that do the murdering. They go after Trump. So this was just released by Palm Beach County, that the judge in this case is wrong. And by the way, he's talking about them. So they're explaining to him that he's wrong. Here's another one, just came out. New York v. Trump could set precedent for the use of New York's overweening executive law. One doesn't have to be a lawyer to see the danger to anyone doing business in the Empire State. Anybody that does business in New York State is crazy. When you have a radical left attorney general like Letitia James, who's a disgrace to our country, who got elected on the fact that she's going to take down President Trump. We're going to take him down. She knew nothing about me. But she got elected on that basis. And we have others likewise. Take a look at what's going on in Georgia. Take a look at Jack Smith. Take a look at these people. This is called election interference, and worse than that, really much worse than that. And you don't get much worse than election interference, especially we're talking presidential election of 2024. So this judge should change his ruling because Palm Beach County said he was totally wrong, and he was ruling based on them. He ruled we didn't even have a chance to testify. I got a call last week, sir, we lost part of the case. I said, the trial didn't even start. You know, the trial starts, I guess, today. He ruled that we lost a big part of the case because he's a Democrat club politician. He's a Democrat operative, and he's a disgrace to people that call themselves judges. And I hope my lawyers go in, and I hope they fight him very hard, because this guy's getting away with murder. And his clerk should not be allowed to be in his ear on every single question. You take a look at what's happening with her. She hates Trump more than he does. So that's where it is. We have 80% of this trial has been won. In June, they came down, the end of June, with a decision, very powerful decision. And it said on statute of limitations and just about everything else, did you say approximately 80% of the trial? Attorneys, is that right? Approximately 80% of the trials won. He refuses to acknowledge his own appellate division. And I think it's a disgrace to our country. And somebody has to fight, because if you don't fight, our country is just going to go down the tubes. This is election interference. This guy's a highly partisan person, and we can't let this stuff happen. So you should ask yourselves as professionals, I have a lot of respect for you, not all of you, but a lot of you. Why is it that he didn't honor the decision of the appellate? And by the way, I believe it was a unanimous decision, right? It's a 5-0 decision, unanimous decision. And he said, I'm not going to honor it. Let's go to trial. This is a judge that should be disbarred. This is a judge that should be out of office. This is a judge that some people say could be charged criminally for what he's doing. He's interfering with an election, and it's a disgrace. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Trump, why do you want to be here in person today?
Because I want to watch this witch hunt myself. I've been going through a witch hunt for years, but this is really now getting dirty between Jack Smith and between all of these DOJ people helping them along. This is a pure witch hunt for purposes of interfering with the elections of the United States of America. It's totally illegal. This judge should be disbarred. He shouldn't be allowed to be a judge. Thank you. Well, I think that was very good. That last 5 minutes was outstanding because the judge essentially conceded that the statute of limitations that we won at the Court of Appeals is in effect. Therefore, about 80% of the case is over. I was going to come out and say that, as you know, we're not entitled to a jury, which is pretty unusual in the United States of America. So we think it's very unfair that I don't have a jury, but the judge's last statement was very fair. And if I read it right, I'll let perhaps one of the lawyers speak to it. But Cliff, maybe you'll speak to it if you would. But the way I interpret that, and the way everyone else in the room seems to interpret that, is that the statute of limitations is a very real thing in this country. And that would be about 80% of this case would be over. Could somebody speak to that, please? Cliff, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So based on the judge's comments,
Based on the judge's comments at the end of the trial today, it would appear that he is agreeing that all of the transactions that closed prior to 2014 are now out of the case.
Which is about 80% of the case. And it's also something that we won on appeal, but was not accepted by this court, but now seems to be accepted by this court. As far as the jury is concerned, it's much different now. I must tell you that it was 20 minutes ago. We were going to come out and complain that, in this country you're entitled to a jury. But we very much appreciate the judge's decision today, or his statement today, on statute of limitations, which is a very big thing. There's a limited time period. And we did nothing wrong. And if you look at the statements, they show that even in 2011, I guess the number was $258 million in cash. Very strong company. I don't believe we really, maybe I wouldn't do a couple of deals or something, but I wouldn't have even needed to go to banks. Banks loved our business. They loved our deals. They weren't defrauded. They lost no money. They made money. They had the finest attorneys that there are. Frankly, their attorneys were better than my attorneys. And they made a lot of money, and they considered me a very good client. I paid them back on time, on schedule. There was no default. They never even sent me a default letter. Not one. For years, never got a default letter. And there's no case here. There's no victim. The banks aren't a victim. The insurance companies are a victim. Everybody got paid. It's a terrible, terrible thing. This was for politics. Now, it has been very successful for them because they took me off the campaign trail. Because I've been sitting in a courthouse all day long instead of being in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, or a lot of other places I could be at. This is a horrible situation for our country. It's never happened before. It's election interference. They're interfering with the presidential election of 2024, and the people of our country see it. But this was a big, I say surprise, but it was a great credit to the court that the judge was willing to do this. He sort of overruled himself, and I greatly respect that. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. We may. I mean, I'd love not to. I'd love to be campaigning instead of doing this. Because I built a great company. That's one thing people are seeing. All the way back to 2011. And today, it's much bigger and much better and even much more liquid. That was $258 million for a real estate development. That's a lot of money. That was in 2011. Today, it's much more than that, much, much more. I built a great company and did great things for New York, and they should respect that. I've employed thousands and thousands of people in New York, and they should respect that. The Attorney General of this state is a disgrace. Letitia James is a disgrace. She's a disgrace to our country and to the state of New York. She should focus on all of the violent crime and the murders going on in New York, not on somebody that paid back the banks in full without a default, and in many cases paid them back early. Thank you very much, everybody.
Your hand. Can you remove your hand? Can you remove your hand?
Thank you very much. Judge Engoron has been given false and extremely misleading information about my net worth. Private company, nobody's supposed to know my net worth, but now everybody is and will, and I hope you're impressed. We built a great company. But he's been given false information, misleading information, and corrupt information by a very corrupt and incompetent Attorney General. Letitia James. This woman is grossly incompetent. She ran on the basis, I will get Trump without knowing anything about it. So he's been given this information. It's now been proven to be false, such as Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach, Florida being worth $18 million, when in fact it's much closer to $1.5 billion. And I appreciate very much the officials of Palm Beach calling yesterday and writing and saying that she was very wrong. That's not the way you value the property. So she said it was $18 million, it's $1.5 billion. Likewise, we've just recently sold 2 properties for many times what they were worth, many times what they were worth in the financial statements. And the statements are actually much lower than the actual net worth. She knows that, but she's fraudulent. Because of the fraudulent numbers she's given, many of which, Mar-a-Lago is just one example, we have other examples that are almost as good, in some cases might even be better. This case should be dismissed. This is not a case. And she should probably be dismissed also because she's terrible and grossly incompetent, as I said. But at a minimum, she should start looking for the murderers and the criminals, the violent criminals all over New York, do something about all of the illegal migrants pouring into our city and state, and not spend the next 6 months in a courthouse because she's been caught early. Her numbers are fraudulent. She's a fraud. Her numbers are fraudulent, and this case should be dismissed. And they ought to get on to violent crime and solving the problems of New York City and New York State. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, why did you decide to come? You didn't have to be here today.
How big is your apartment in Trump Tower? Are you telling the truth?
Expose her as that. You see what's going on? It's a rigged deal. Frankly, you saw what was just put out about Schumer and the principal clerk. That is disgraceful.
Speaker McCarthy, should he stay?
Will you be
They
here
were going to
tomorrow?
vote to vacate him this afternoon, sir.
it's going very well. Everybody was given financial statements. The financial statements are extremely strong. The assets are much more valuable as opposed to less valuable than are in the statements. The institutions that all were paid off, they were paid up, they were done, they made money, they had no fraud. There was absolutely no fraud. They all made money, they were all happy, 100% happy. And I think very importantly is everything, many, many warnings, page 1, page 2, and many pages. It says, please, you must understand that you have to do your own due diligence, and you have to, above all, do your own research and analysis. Do not rely on anything. Do not rely on the financial statements. Also, the financial statements are very strong in terms of cash, liquidity, and everything else. This case is a scam. There can't be fraud when you've told institutions to do their own work. This case is a fraud, and it's a scam. Thank you very much.
Why is it a scam? How does this affect the election? Why is it a scam? Why is it a scam?
Mr. Trump, will you be testifying? Mr. Trump, will you be testifying?
Yes, I will. At the appropriate time, I will be. I think it's going very well. Everybody was given financial statements. The financial statements are extremely strong. The assets are much more valuable as opposed to less valuable than are in the statements. The institutions that all were paid off, they were paid up, they were done, they made money, they had no fraud. There was absolutely no fraud. They all made money, they were all happy, 100% happy. And I think very importantly is everything, many, many warnings, page 1, page 2, and many pages. It says, please, you must understand that you have to do your own due diligence, and you have to, above all, do your own research and analysis. Do not rely on anything. Do not rely on the financial statements. Also, the financial statements are very strong in terms of cash, liquidity, and everything else. This case is a scam. There can't be fraud when you've told institutions to do their own work. This case is a fraud, and it's a scam. Thank you very much.
Why is it a scam? How does this affect the election? Why is it?
How are you feeling today, Mr. President?
I feel very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. This witch hunt that's going on using statute 6312, which is a consumer fraud statute, which may be unconstitutional, doesn't allow me a jury, doesn't allow me anything. We have a prosecutor, Letitia James, who's incompetent, and what she's doing to our state, forcing companies out by the thousands, forcing people out, but forcing companies out by the thousands, while crime, and violent crime in particular, runs rampant. So this witch hunt does not allow me to jury. A lot of people say, oh, that can't be possible, somebody didn't check a box. It has nothing to do with it. Under 6312, you are not entitled to a jury. It's the first time it's ever been used for a purpose like this. Never been used. They used it on me, the former president, the leading candidate. I'm leading Joe Biden by a lot, which is probably why this is all happening. Not probably, it's definitely. They're coordinating with Washington, 100%. But without that, none of these cases would be going on. They've weaponized justice in our country. This trial is a disgrace. Never happened. A thing like this has never happened before. And just simply, I put in financial statements with a disclaimer. In other words, don't even bother reading them to the bank. I borrowed money on, very under leverage, borrowed money on a building or something, many different things. I borrowed the money, I paid back the money in full, 100%. There were no defaults, there were no letters of reprimand, the banks were extremely happy, and in many cases I paid the money back early. And then I got sued years later by this horrible attorney general, this woman that ran for governor and failed. You know, she did this because she was running for governor. And then she ran and she failed. She had no polls and they forced her out. And she came back and she became attorney general again. and we got stuck with it. So she brought the case under the statute that had never been used for a thing like this before, ever. We're not entitled to a jury. Because if I had a jury, even though it's in New York, and I think I'd do fine with New York, but if I had a jury, we'd win this case very easily. But I don't have a jury. And you see what's happening. This is a railroad. And it's the beginning of communism in our country. This is the beginning of communism. So we're going back in, playing the game and doing everything right. But just you remember, I borrow money, the statements were perfect. Not only perfect, the statements are much more conservative than my real net worth. My real net worth is much higher, not lower, much higher than the statements. So I put the statements in. They don't use the statements because it has a disclaimer clause. They do their own work. The clause tells them, do your own due diligence, do your own work. And that's where we are. And I got sued. And I hear I may be guilty of a lot. For no reason, they may give a lot of money for something where there was nothing wrong. This is a witch hunt. This is just a continuation of the witch hunt that started the day I came down the escalator in Trump Tower. And it's a shame for our country. You borrow money, you pay it back, the bank loves us. They said, what did he do wrong? He didn't do anything wrong. We loaned him money, a big bank. These are big banks. By the way, represented by the biggest law firms, most prestigious, the best law firms in the country. You borrow money, you pay it back, and you get sued by a political animal. And that's where we are. And that's the way it goes. And that's why New York State is failing, and that's why companies are leaving by the thousands. I'll see you later. Thank you.
President, Speaker.
So we're going down the line, page after page, document after document, and the bottom line is this is rigged. Because the judge knows whatever he's going to do. He said that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million, and it's worth $1.5 billion or thereabouts. And he said it was worth $18 billion. So they defrauded us because he called me a fraud. He called me a fraud, and he values Mar-a-Lago at $18 billion. $18 million. And you can't do that. It's worth probably 50 to 100 times more than that. And our corrupt Attorney General, she's totally corrupt. She just wanted the publicity to run for governor, and then she failed running for governor. She got practically nothing in terms of vote. But she went after Trump because she was running for governor. That's the only reason. But she got the judge to value Mar-a-Lago for $18 million, when the smallest house in Palm Beach is probably worth $50 million. And this is the biggest, the best anywhere in the country. There's nothing like it. So they put it down at $18 million. And they said, I overvalued it because we had it valued at a much lower number than it's worth. And by the way, my financial documents are valued much less than my actual value, which nobody even knows. But the financial documents that I gave to the bank are much less than my actual net worth. So therefore, I gave them to the bank. They can't be a fraud because I gave them lower numbers. I'm probably one of the only people ever to seek a loan. I didn't even need the loan because you see the kind of cash I have. I didn't even need loans. Maybe you don't do a deal or two. But I have a lot of cash, a lot of everything. You know, a lot of people are very surprised at how successful this is. You saw it today with the kind of cash I have and the kind of success we've had. But I'm a private company. I was never going to reveal this kind of stuff, but now it comes out. It comes out because a corrupt attorney general sued me for fraud. And then they found out they had no case. And they have no case. And today, if you read the New York Law Journal, they basically say they have no case against Trump. But I'm here, stuck here, and I can't campaign. I'd rather be right now in Iowa. I'd rather be in New Hampshire, South Carolina, or Ohio, or a lot of other places. But I'm stuck here because I have a corrupt attorney general that communicates with the DOJ in Washington to keep me nice and busy. Because I'm leading Biden in the polls by a lot. That's all this is. This is election interference. They made up a fake case. They're fraudulent people. And the judge already knows what he's going to do. He's a Democrat judge. In all fairness to him, he has no choice. He has no choice. He's run by the Democrats. I know this city better than anybody knows this city. Nobody knows it like I do. He's a Democrat judge out of the clubhouses. He's controlled, and it's a shame. What's going on here is a shame. Our whole system is corrupt. This is corrupt. Atlanta is corrupt. And what's coming out of D.C. is corrupt. But this is a good one because this one is interesting. This one is very interesting. Why attend? Because I want to point it out to the press how corrupt it is, because nobody else seems to be able to do it.
Mr. President,
New York Law Journal today did a very good job, and others have done a good job. They say there's no case here, but we have a corrupt attorney general that tried to make a case. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, do you believe in karma? Mr. President, do you believe in karma?
My bad.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, step out.
Sir, you want to do a definition later today?
Yes, I will be.
What's the response to Jackson's order?
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're at a trial today that should not be taking place. As you know, the head of Deutsche Bank recently just testified, and he said that Trump did nothing wrong. We made a loan. We were very happy with the loan. We got paid back. There were no defaults. It was a very good transaction, and he would do it again. He was a very powerful witness. And we have other executives coming in from banks that will say the same thing. This is a disgraceful situation. This is an attorney general, Letitia, that went out and campaigned on, I will get Trump. I will get Trump no matter what. I'll get Trump. I promise I'll get him. We have 2 tapes on her now that have come out since the trial because people took tapes of her because they couldn't believe her ranting and raving like a lunatic. But just as the Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James, and she shouldn't be allowed to be Attorney General. She's defrauded the public with this trial. She said that Mar-a-Lago, she convinced the judge at Mar-a-Lago was worth in Palm Beach, Florida, the most expensive land in the world, I guess, and the most expensive houses definitely in the world. In Mar-a-Lago, the biggest house, the most spectacular place in all of Florida, was worth $18 million when it's worth approximately, could be close to 100 times that amount. And based on that testimony, and based on her convincing the judge that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million instead of $1 billion to $1.5 billion, which would sell very easily, which we've already proven, but we'll have people come up and say that and prove it, the most important people, the brokers that make the sales. But based on that, he ruled against me. He ruled fraud. I mean, he said fraud. They are the fraudulent people because they ruled a house that was worth 18. They put down is worth 18 million, and it's worth maybe close to 100 times that amount. And based on that, they ruled against me, having to do with fraud, which is a big statement. But they are the frauds because the house is worth $1 billion, $1.5 billion, 750 million. It's worth a fortune. The most expensive house probably in the world, and they said it was worth $18 million. And they don't do anything about it. But based on that, and also Doral, they have Doral at a very low number, and it's worth many times the number that they put. So they chose to do this. So I just want to say the head of Deutsche Bank came in. He said we were great. The loan was great. Everything was fine. And it was perfect. And this was their witness, wasn't even my witness. And we have other bankers coming in saying the same thing. We built a great company, got a lot of cash, got a lot of great assets, got some of the greatest real estate assets anywhere in the world. It's really been an honor to have built it, and we worked hard with my family. And my children are involved in this, and they don't deserve to be involved in this. This is a witch hunt by a radical lunatic attorney general that shouldn't be allowed to be an attorney general. He's horrible. And it's very unfair. We don't get a jury trial. There's no jury. And we don't have any jury. Somebody said we could have checked a box or something. We don't check a box. This is a statute that was never used before, never once used before for anything like this. I'm the first one. Isn't that nice? And I should be in Iowa now. I should be in New Hampshire now. I should be in South Carolina now or someplace else campaigning. The good news is we're about 60 points up on everybody, and we're leading Biden by 11. And that's why they're doing this, because this is all coming out of Washington. The judge is going to make a decision. Now, the judge, I've gotten to respect the judge and like the judge. I like him, but it's not fair because I don't know how he can make a fair decision on this. He's got all the Democrats pushing him left and right, pushing him around like a pinball. And it's a very unfair situation that they put me in. I want a jury. I'm entitled to a jury. But this is a case that should have never been brought. And just to conclude, they said I overvalued my financial statements. Well, actually, the financial statements are undervalued by tremendous amounts of money. They're very conservative. They're undervalued. The actual worth is much more than that. So therefore, there's no fraud. They don't mention that there's a disclaimer clause. There's a big disclaimer, which it says basically do your own due diligence. Don't even rely on the financial statements. Again, the financial statements are, the actual statement is very much less than the actual worth. The actual worth is higher, so therefore it's very conservative, and that's what the banks got. And therefore there's no fraud. Then there's no fraud because there's a disclaimer clause at the beginning and all throughout the financial statements. It says do your own work, do not rely on these statements. 100% do not rely on these statements. And third thing is, I was tried under a statute that's never been used before that doesn't allow you to have a jury. I'm not allowed to have a jury. I never heard of that before. I don't get the option. If I begged for a jury, they wouldn't give me a jury. I get no jury. A judge is going to make a decision. He's a Democrat judge. He's very liberal. And I believe he's under a lot of pressure. This is a rigged trial. This is a rigged situation. And our country can't stand these things. And the people of our country understand it. We're being railroaded. And I have other trials we're being railroaded. You saw yesterday where they take away my right to speak. I won't be able to speak like I'm speaking to you. And I'm not saying anything wrong. I'm saying the truth. I won't be able to do this with that trial. Because the judge, which of course we're appealing, because the judge said basically I don't have a right to speak. And I'm the #1 candidate, leading the Republicans by 55 or 60 points. That should be over. And leading Joe Biden. And I'm being restricted. My speech has been taken away from me. I'm a candidate that's running for office, and I'm not allowed to speak. This is a railroading that's all coming out of the Department of Justice. It's all set up by Biden and his thugs that he's surrounded with to try and sneak out an election victory that he's not entitled to win because he's been the worst president in the history of our country. Thank you very much.
What does Melania think about this, Mr.
Mr.
President?
President, the speaker race, did you make calls on Georgia?
If Jordan gets the speakership, is Jordan ready for that?
Mr. President, what are your thoughts on the trial so far? You've been listening to the witness testimonies.
The trial is going very well, but we don't have a jury. So I have no idea what happens with this. The trial's going very well. Deutsche Bank testified that, first of all, the loans were paid off. There was no default. There was no problem. There's no victim except me. I'm the victim here. There's no victim. There's no victim whatsoever. This is just a witch hunt by an attorney general that ran for governor and failed. She used me because she ran for governor and she failed. There were no defaults. Every loan was perfect. They were all paid off. If they ever did this to anybody else, any other business person, what they would find would be ridiculous. You know what they find with us? Nothing. There's nothing. The loans were perfect. The loans were paid off. All interest was paid. There was no defaults. I never even received a default letter. And I got plaques and trophies from the institutions in many cases for having done such a good job, which we're going to be presenting in trial. This is just a railroad job. It's a witch hunt with no jury, and it's a runaway freight train, and it's a disgrace. And any business that moved into New York should not do it. You should stay the hell out of here, because I'll tell you what, this is a corrupt system that we're in.
Why do you think your family is being persecuted? What do you think about Cohen not being
I'll tell you what, Cohen didn't have the guts, but I'll tell you why my family is being persecuted.
Yes, Mr.
Because I'm leading in the polls against Biden by a lot. You saw Washington Post the other day came out, ABC fake news. Maybe it is fake, I don't know. But we were leading by 10 or 11 points. Yesterday another one came out, we're leading Biden by 6 points. And that's why. And we're leading the Republicans, we're leading the sanctimonious by 60 points, 6-0, 60 points more. And that's why this is happening. If this weren't happening, if I weren't running for president and doing so well, winning, it wouldn't be happening. You know what happened in 2016? And you know what happened in 2020? We did much better in 2020 than we did in 2016. Getting millions and millions more votes. People don't like to talk about that. But got millions and millions more votes. That's why this is happening. That's the only reason it's happening. I hope that, for Speaker, I hope that Jim is doing well. You'll have to tell me I've been wasting time with a railroaded court. I should be entitled, excuse me, I should be entitled to a jury, like anybody else is entitled to a jury. But this case should have never been brought. It's an insult. Remember this, the financial statements are very conservative. The real numbers are more. They're conservative financial. They said, oh, the financial statements are valued higher. The financial statements are at a lower number. They're conservative. So there is no fraud. Number two, we have a reliance clause. We have what's called a disclaimer right up front, all over it. All over the financial. It says don't rely on these financial statements. Do your own due diligence. Do your own analysis. So there's no fraud. And number three, I said before, I'm being tried under a statute that nobody has ever been tried under. That doesn't give me a jury, that doesn't give me any rights whatsoever. They can do whatever they want. And it's a disgrace. Now it's turned out that I have great financial statements. It's turned out that the company is worth much more than the financial statements. They were saying just the opposite. They valued things at ridiculous numbers, like Mar-a-Lago at $18 million, when it's worth perhaps 100 times that amount. Perhaps 100 times. The fact is we have a corrupt legal system in New York City and New York State. And you know what? We have a corrupt legal system in our country. The DOJ is corrupt, and they're leading this whole thing for election interference. Thank you
Are
very
you
much.
going to come back and waste your time again, sir?
Are you coming back tomorrow?
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't know what's going on. I've been wasting a lot of time on a case that should have never been brought. You see what's happening. The government lied. They just lied. They didn't reveal all of the information that they had. They didn't reveal all the evidence that made me totally innocent of anything that they said. The government lied. They've totally misrepresented the case. So, unfortunately, I have to be here. I'm not campaigning. I have to be here for this. For what's taking place today, and you all saw it, I assume you were all in there. This was like Perry Mason. Thank you.
Mr. President, does Jordan have the votes?
One second. Quick break.
Mr. President, Jim Jordan is on the second ballot. Do you support anyone else, Mr. Speaker? Lisa Devine?
Well, we're going to see a lot of good people, great Republicans, great people generally. They love our country. We'll see what happens. I'm tied up in this ridiculous court case, which is exactly what the Democrats wanted when they did. It's called election interference, tie me up as much as they can. But you see what's happened today. The government got caught in vicious lies about appraisals and about values, because the values are very conservative. And we told you the statement is conservative compared to the real values, and that's come out. Plus, as you probably watched, they have a disclaimer in there, meaning you could look at it in a lot of different ways, but it means go out and get your own analysis, do your own analysis, and everybody that's seen it, they said they've never seen a clause like that. Go out and do due diligence to the banks. The banks came in, as you know, Deutsche Bank came in, he was their witness, and he was a great witness for us. They said they were very happy, the loan was paid off, there were no defaults, there were no deficiencies, there was absolutely nothing. And I will tell you, what they've done here, the Attorney General sitting inside, spending her whole day here, day after day after day, when people are being murdered all over the streets, the sidewalks of New York, violent crime, and no business is going to move into New York. They used a statute on me that's never been used, not once, has never been used for anything like this. And they used it on me where I don't get a jury, I don't get anything. We have no rights whatsoever. Any company coming to New York would be crazy because it's a setup. There's a rigged trial. We have a hostile group of people. We have a very hostile judge. I hate to say it. We have a very, very hostile judge. And I think everybody knows that, and we see that. But the good thing is we have all of the evidence on our side. They have nothing. And it's a case that should have never been brought. I just read many, many articles saying this case is a disgrace to our nation. It's a disgrace to New York and New York State. And that's exactly what it is. It's a total disgrace. So.
Mr. President, what do you think about Michael Cohen testifying today? Do you think it's about disloyalty?
Well, he's a proven liar, as you know. So a felon, served a lot of time for lying, and we're going to just go in and see. And I think you'll see that for yourself very easily. The Southern District came out with a scathing statement about him. So he's a liar, trying to get a better deal for himself, but it's not going to work. This case, by any other judge, this case would have been over a long time ago. We did nothing wrong, and that's been proven. Thank you. We'll be out there.
Sidney Powell and Kenneth Jesborough pleaded guilty in response to that. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Can't go back in. Listening to the testimony so far, wondering if you could share with us your thoughts.
Well, we're totally innocent. The accountants were lambasted by the Attorney General and everybody else, and they just admitted that there was nothing wrong with the financial statements. They just admitted that. They've been abused, they've been hurt very badly, but there was nothing wrong. They found no discrepancies. There was nothing wrong with the financial. This case should be ended immediately, and it should have never started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Stand by. Mr. President, you threw your hands up a few minutes ago regarding the Buffalo Bills. Can you explain your reaction to the testimony you just heard, sir?
Yeah, I was going to buy it, but the team sold for a lot more money than I offered. I offered $1 billion. The team sold for $1.4 billion, as I understand it. I was a bidder on the team. I had all the financing and everything else that you needed. There was absolutely nothing wrong, and we didn't even make the deal. And I'm trying to figure out, and it's many years ago, trying to figure out what relevance does this have to this scam case. It's a scam. It's political interference. It's a fight against a political opponent that's leading him in the polls. This is a scam case. I'm trying to figure out, let's see, Buffalo Bills. I said, when was that? It was many years ago. And we had the financing with everything. I bid $1 billion for the team. It sold for, I believe, $1.4 billion. And I'm saying, what does this have to do with this case? The whole case is a hoax.
Why did the judge?
Mr. President, can you expand on Emmer's nomination?
Mr. President, will you visit Capitol Hill for the Speaker of the House race to meet with House members in person?
I may, but I think Mike Johnson is doing very well. He's a tremendous congressman, respected by everybody. I hear it looks like it's really good. I haven't had one negative comment about him. Everybody likes him. He's respected by all, and that's something we need. And it looks like that's going to happen. So that'll be a wonderful thing. I put out a truth today on him, and they did one last night. You saw that. With somebody that's going to be really spectacular, and maybe for many years to come. He'll be very good. So we're very happy about that. On the trial here, it's going very well. This is a Biden witch hunt deal. It all comes out of the DOJ. It's to interfere with the election. Our company has turned out to be much stronger than anyone even thought. The financial statements are much lower than the actual numbers. The actual numbers are much higher. We're in the process of proving that. We already have proved it. They had Mar-a-Lago valued at $18 million, the Attorney General, with the judge, and working in coordination with the judge, and it's worth approximately 50 to 100 times that amount. It's a witch hunt. It's just a bad trial, a very unfair trial. The only time the statute's ever been used for this is this. This is a statute that doesn't give you a jury, doesn't give you anything. It's a pure political witch hunt. But we have the facts on our side, so the company is much stronger than they anticipated, much stronger than anyone really understood. It was a private company, so nobody understood it. The assets have very little debt. We have a lot of cash. It's a great company, and we're happy with the way it's going. But it's a witch hunt. There's no question about it. Getting back to Congress, we think Mike Johnson's going to do really well. He's popular. He's smart. He's sharp. He's going to be fantastic. I think he's going to be a fantastic speaker. I believe that will happen. We'll see what. You'll let me know when I come out. I'll be out in a couple of hours. Well, I don't believe that because I've spoken to Mark Meadows many, many times over the years, and he strongly believed the election was rigged. Now, of course, you know, deranged Jack Smith and the prosecutors, they go after somebody for years, and they say, look, here's the story. We'll give you nothing. We'll erect a statue to you, or you're going to go to jail for 10 years for having done nothing wrong. So, you know, a lot of people have to make that decision. Some people would never make that decision. Other people would. But Mark Meadows always felt it was rigged. The whole thing was rigged. It was rigged, and it was stolen. And because it was rigged and stolen, our country's gone to hell. You take a look at the border, you take a look at Israel, that would have never happened. You take a look at Ukraine, that would have never happened. Our country's going to hell. Just look at energy independent we were, and now we're not energy independent. We're not even close. We're buying energy from Venezuela and lots of other places, and we have more liquid gold under our feet. We're a crime-ridden nation. We're a nation in decline, all because of a rigged and stolen election. Thank you very much.
What about Giuliani? Do you think he'll take a deal?
Mr. President, what did you think of the testimony by Michael Cohen so far?
Well, he's proven to be a liar, and that's been proven very loudly, clearly. He's a felon, convicted felon for lying, went to jail for lying, and this is their only witness. When you think about it, it's pretty amazing. We've proven that the numbers that they talk about are much higher than they ever imagined. In fact, they don't really know what to do because the numbers are much higher. Not even the same. It is subjective always, but it's turned out to be not only subjective, the numbers are much higher, and the statements were actually very conservative. The financial statements that we used were very conservative. In addition to that, we have a disclaimer which says go out and do your own due diligence. Don't necessarily believe what you read. In fact, don't believe what you read. Here are the financials. You can look at them. You can do whatever you want with them, but do not do anything in terms of considering them without analysis or due diligence. And that's very clear. The other thing is that, as you know, and I say it again and again because I've never seen anything like it, I don't get a jury. This was a trial should have never been brought, but if we had a jury, it would have been fair, at least, even if it was a somewhat negative jury, because no negative jury would vote against me. But this judge will, because this judge is a very partisan judge, with a person who's very partisan sitting alongside of him, perhaps even much more partisan than he is. So we are doing very well. The facts are speaking very loud. He's a totally discredited witness, and you haven't seen anything yet. This goes on for a long time. He's a totally discredited witness. On The fact that a statute was used to sue Donald Trump that's never been used before. Think of it. They used a statute that's never been used before because they didn't want to have a jury, and because this statute doesn't allow a jury, and because this statute discusses things that are much, much different than anybody would think. This is really from a fascist country. That's what they're doing. It's election interference. They're doing it for that reason. They're doing it because they're losing in the polls. They're doing it because our country is going to hell. Our country has become a laughing stock all over the world. And this is why they do this and other litigation. But we will win. Ultimately, we will win because that's, the facts are on our side to a level that nobody's ever seen anything like it before. This was a case that never should have been brought, but certainly it was a case that should have had a jury. And we don't have a jury. We don't have the option of even thinking about a jury. We have a very biased group, and we have a corrupt attorney general that brought this case so that she could be elected governor, and that failed. She didn't get elected governor, and she continues on with the case. Thank you very much.
Do you see an appeal
Mr.
from
President, do you have advice for Mark Meadows?
The witness just admitted that we won the trial, and the judge should end this trial immediately. Thank you.
Mr. Trump, you looking forward to testifying today?
I am. So while Israel is being attacked, while Ukraine is being attacked, while inflation is eating our country alive, I'm down here, and these are all political opponent attack ads by the Biden administration. Their poll numbers are terrible. You show what happened today. The New York Times and CBS came out with a poll that I'm leading all over the place, but it's a very unfair situation. This is really election interference. That's all it is. This trial is ridiculous. The numbers are much greater than on the financial statement. And we've already proven that. They said Mar-a-Lago's worth $18 million. Mar-a-Lago's worth anywhere from probably 50 to 100 times more than that. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. These are political operatives that I'm going to be dealing with right now. You have a racist attorney general who made some terrible statements, and we just see some more that came over the wires today. It's a very sad situation for our country. We shouldn't have this. This is for third world countries, and it's very unfair. It's very unfair. But in the meantime, the people of the country understand it, they see it, and they don't like it. They don't like it because it's political warfare, as you would call it, or political lawfare. Another name, I got a lot of names for it, but usually it takes place in third world countries and banana republics. Nobody's ever seen that to this extent. We've never seen it here. But we will go along, and we will hopefully do very well in every regard. We'll win the election, and we'll make America great again. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make America great again. But we have to take away from the thugs that we deal with and the horrible people that actually must hate our country to do this. But we will we'll fight very hard for our country. Thank you very much, everybody. see what a scam this is. This is a case that should have never been brought. It's a case that should be dismissed immediately. The fraud was on behalf of the court. The court was the fraudster in this case. They made references to assets that were very valuable, and they said they had no idea. They had no idea what the numbers were when they said $18 million from Mar-a-Lago, and it's 50 to 100 times that amount by any estimation. It's a terrible thing that's happened here. We're taking days and days and weeks, and it goes on, and then you look at the outside world and what's happening. But of course, they're getting their wish, because I don't have to be here for the most part, but I sort of do have to be here because I want to be here, because it's a scam. And this is a case that should have never been brought, and it's a case that now should be dismissed. Everybody saw what happened today. Everybody saw what happened with their star witness, who admitted that I never told him what he originally said. I did. He admitted that he lied, and he has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. That's their only witness. That's their only witness. And I think you saw what I had to say today, and it was very conclusive. Everything we did was absolutely right. To think that we're being sued and spending all this time and money, and yet people being killed all over the world, that this country could stop. With inflation and all of the other problems that this country has, I think it's a disgrace. And when you look at the numbers, the poll numbers that came out today from the New York Times and CBS, I'm sure the Times was not too happy. But people are sick and tired of what's happening. This is a sad, I think it's a very sad day for America. But anyway, this is a case that should have never been brought, and it's a case that should be immediately dismissed. Thank you. Thank you very much.
President Trump, what do you think the Reynolds endorsement?
Are you conducting the defense case?
Mr. Trump, regardless of the reaction to the governors taking shots at you yesterday with your president from yesterday, what is your reaction to the governors taking
So
shots?
thank you very much, everybody, and we appreciate you being here. This is a witch hunt, the likes of which probably nobody has ever seen. We've put on a case that is absolutely 100%. There's not a judge in the country that wouldn't have given us a total victory, but there's not a judge in the country that would have even taken this case. This is a witch hunt, and it's a very corrupt trial. Now, we won this case. We won this case at the appellate division, most of it. We cover about 90% of the case. We won this case at the appellate division, and this judge refuses to acknowledge the appellate division. He said very specifically, we're going forward because there's something wrong here. We won this case. Remember this. Just put it in your heads. This case was won at the appellate division, and the judge refuses to do what the appellate division demands he do. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. When you win at the appellate division, that's your high court. The judge has to be bound by what their decision is. Well, we won at the appellate division. Part of that victory was Ivanka was not having to put herself through this, and they ruled that. But the bigger part of it was that about 90%, because it's statute of limitations, about 90% of the case disappears. So remember this. We won the case at the appellate division, the high court, and this judge refuses to acknowledge that victory or that demand, and that's very serious. So we're going in now. We have an expert witness, one of the great experts in the country, and I hope you'll all be able to listen to him, but it'll just be another day. If you look at the case, we did nothing wrong. There were no victims. The bank loves us. The bank testified. They love us. We did absolutely nothing wrong. We never even defaulted. We never had a default letter sent to us. The bank said we were a perfect customer. The bank didn't even know why they were here. And yet you have people being murdered outside. All over the streets, they're being murdered. There's violent crime. And this attorney general who's crazed. She's a lunatic. The attorney general sits here because she knows that she has a judge, and no matter all the evidence, that judge is going to rule in her favor. He ruled against me before the case even started. the case hadn't started. He knew nothing, and he ruled against me. The other thing is this. He valued Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, because that was good for her case, at a value of $18 million, when in fact it's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times that amount. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, but just remember what I said at the beginning. We wanted the appellate division, and this judge refuses to honor that victory or that decision or that demand.
Mr. Judge, why did you say you were a dictator?
Did you watch the
Why did you say you were a dictator on day one? Can you explain that, please? Can you explain that to the people?
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, I think it's going very well. It's another day that we've been proven totally innocent. The expert witness, one of the most respected people in the country, worked for major corporations. You heard it all. He's at the Stern School of Business at NYU, a top professor. He reviewed fully the documents that this horrendous Attorney General put forth, and he found absolutely no fraud, accounting fraud of any kind. This is a highly respected man. I don't know him, but he's a expert witness, and he found no fraud whatsoever. He found no accounting fraud whatsoever. And like everyone else, he said, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? This is a political witch hunt. This is meant to influence an election. This also comes from the White House. This is not just a state matter, because the White House is controlling district attorneys. In fact, in the district attorney's office, they put one of their top people. DOJ put one of their top people right under the Attorney General, put him into the district attorney's office, also put a man into the state Attorney General's office, Letitia James' office. Happened to be the same man. This is coming right from the White House. This is a disgraceful situation. The country's never seen anything like it. But this expert witness, highly respected by everybody, with a resume that few people have ever seen before, said there was no fraud, there was no accounting fraud, there was nothing. And this is what we're doing here while people are being murdered right outside on the sidewalks and the streets of New York, while people are experiencing horrible, violent crime at levels that nobody's ever seen in the city before. This is what the Attorney General is spending all the time on. So just to put it, finally, he's going to continue to testify, but I don't imagine he's going to be changing his basic statement. His finding is that there was no accounting fraud whatsoever. The statements that we put in were very conservative. They were the opposite of what they said. The accounting fraud And the fraud was on behalf of the judge and the attorney general, who took assets and made them numbers that were fraudulent. As an example, Mar-a-Lago. As an example, Doral in Miami. As an example, 40 Wall Street and others, where they cut the values to a level that nobody's even imagined. You take a look at Doral and look at the numbers that we're talking about for Doral. But the most obvious of all, because of the fact that people know it, is when you value a place like Mar-a-Lago at $18 million when it's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times that amount. We had an expert witness in the other day. He's the biggest broker in the country for luxury properties. I guess he's the ultimate expert, actually. And he valued Mar-a-Lago at over $1 billion. And the judge valued it at $18 million. The judge doesn't know the value of Mar-a-Lago. And the attorney general is the one that convinced the judge to say that. It's a fraud. The whole case is a fraud. What they've done is they've weaponized justice, and this is coming from the White House, because I'm beating Biden by a lot, and this is coming right out of the White House. You know it, I know it, and they know it. So just to end this, the expert witness, one of the most highly respected people in the country for doing this kind of work, found absolutely no accounting fraud. This case should be ended. Also, the judge, as you know, was rebuked in that he was overturned by the appellate division of the New York State Supreme Court, which is a higher court, much higher court than where we are right now. The judge refused to acknowledge it. This case would be over, because that was about 90% of the case, having to do with statute of limitations. This case should be over. This case should have never been brought. This was a political witch hunt by an attorney general who's out of control and tried to get elected governor and failed. But this is a political witch hunt, and our country should be ashamed of what's going on. But we will probably go forward, and I'm sure nothing will have any bearing on what this judge does. It's a very sad day for our country, because people are coming in. We could say this every day, and we are totally innocent. This is weaponization of justice. This is something that nobody's ever seen to this extent. It's called election interference. It's a sad day for our country that a thing like this can take place. I'm sitting in a courthouse instead of being in Iowa, where I should be, even though I'm leading by about 40 points. Thank you very much.
Mr. Trump, a group of New York senators has asked the Board of Elections to keep you off next year's ballot in New York. What is your response to that?
So today was a very good day. Today we proved yet again, every day we do, that this was an amazing company, has more cash than the loans. We have bigger, much bigger cash than any of the loans. The loans were paid back in full. There was no problem with the loans. The bank was very happy, they testified. Everything was perfect, and it's a disgrace that this case goes forward, and it shouldn't go forward. The other thing we're asking is that, and we're asking actually the media to look at, we won, as you know, in the Court of Appeals, and the judge refuses to honor that victory. This is a first that anybody can find. When you win in the Court of Appeals, the judge has no choice but to honor it. This judge didn't. This was like something happened a number of years ago where a developer had zoning, and the zoning was done and completed, and this judge didn't like the zoning, so he vetoed it, and he said he's not going to allow the building to be built, and then the Court of Appeals overturned him. But this is a case that should have never been brought. This is a witch hunt. This is election interference at a level that has never seen before. It comes out of the DOJ and the White House in order to hurt a political opponent. And actually, it's driving up my pulse because the people of our country get it. Poll numbers are the highest I've ever had, and the people of our country get it. It's a disgrace to America. Thank you very much.
Do you think any expert testimony has changed the judge's mind?